Today we'll be looking at client script part 5. Commands is something that takes client script. It gives client script a new dimension in a way of speaking. This is what we'll be going through throughout today's presentation. Since most of this and most of the understanding of commands is going to be dependent on your understanding of client script, we'll do a quick recap of what we've discussed in the previous 4 sessions, and then we'll get on to commands. We'll see how client script differs from the commands and a few points to remember, and we'll have a short demo. We'll take a look at a few use cases. In the first part, we looked at client script. So if you're new to client script is nothing but code scripts that are written in JavaScript that run, as the name suggests, that are run on the client side, right? So it extends the functionality of CRM. For example, whatever the user sees on his screen, the client script loads on his browser, and the client script does changes to the visual user interface of the browser, right? Of CRM on the browser. But it's not limited to that. Of course, client script offers a number of client-side as well as server-side SDKs, so you can make changes to what the user sees on the client side, on his browser, as well as being able to make changes to the data that is stored in the server in CRM, as well as being able to access third-party libraries as well. So it's very versatile, but it focuses mainly on the stuff that the visual editing that you can do to the user interface on the client side, right? And client script is limited in one way, in that it is focused on events, right? It is focused on modules, and it's focused on layouts, and it's focused on the events that are done in different pages of different modules, right? So since obviously we have multiple modules, multiple layouts, multiple fields, and multiple screens for each module, client scripts can be triggered in multiple ways and in multiple places. And this is a quick recap of what we saw in the first session. A number of basic ways in which client script changes can help change the user interface that the user sees on his browser, right? So 90% of the questions that are related to client script are solved using these basic questions. And most of it is like simple data validation, hiding information that a particular user who doesn't have enough permissions that they don't need to see, you can hide it from the user as soon as it loads on the user's side, right? So stuff like that, it doesn't have to be written on the server side in deluge. That's just complicating things unnecessarily. So these are the different things that can be done in client script. So if you just go through this, you'll get a very good idea of what I'm talking about. So it's mostly the user interface and showing stuff, hiding stuff, throwing alerts, and all that. The second part, we covered a little more advanced features. How you can integrate widgets that are already uploaded in CRM, how you can use client script to show widgets, how you can navigate between different screens of different modules and pass data between them, how you can send emails from the user interface. And obviously, we saw how you can have third-party integrations, not just using client script. Like I said, client script has the capability of server-side APIs as well as being able to integrate with third-party applications. But from client script, how you can also access your deluge functions that you've already written. And from the deluge functions also, you'll be able to do your third-party integrations or any APIs that you might want, any Zoho APIs that you might want to call from your deluge code. So client script is very versatile. And if you missed any of these sessions, after the session, I would strongly recommend you go and give the previous sessions a watch. Parts 3 and parts 4 were community sourced. We had a few of our power users, Vigneshwaran and Eric Krobach, who presented their real life use cases that they use client script in their businesses. So that was really nice to see how client script was being used by the community in real life. So make sure you take a look at that as well. So we'll get started with client script commands. So client script commands is built on client script. So it shares like 90% of what client scripts can do. And the remaining 10% in which client scripts are limited, the commands are unleashed from those chains. client scripts are tied to a particular module. For example, if you're experienced with client script, a client script that you write, it can be run only from a particular module, only from a particular layout, and only from a particular event. If that event is triggered, then the client script will run, right? So commands, it breaks away. It's not tied by those chains. A command can be triggered. You can use, like you can see here, these commands can trigger the client scripts anytime, anywhere, not unlike client scripts, the basic client scripts. So there are two ways in which these commands can be triggered. Obviously, one you see on the screen is the command palette, and another one is the keyboard shortcuts. And it would be pretty ironic if the command palette itself didn't have a keyboard shortcut. So you just tap CC and the command palette opens up as well. I'll show you in a little while as we go through the demonstration. So there are a few things to note when it comes to client script commands. Not everybody has the permission to edit them. Let me show you my CRM. So this is my CRM. So here, if I go into users and profiles, administrator, here you see the developer permissions. So only the profiles and the users who belong to the profiles which have the manage extensibility turned on will be able to modify and manage client script commands. Okay. So any user who doesn't have this permission, any user who belongs to a profile that doesn't have this permission, they won't be able to make changes to the client script commands. The second thing is, since client script commands are built on client scripts, it loads on the client side. So too many JavaScript files loading on the client side might seriously slow down your UI, and nobody likes a UI that keeps sticking. So the limit is 30 client script commands that can be created for at a time. And obviously, when keyboard shortcuts are come into play, we don't want to be stuck to one keyboard shortcut. For example, I have an extension that I use that brings up this pasteboard. So I don't want my administrator to add a keyboard shortcut that clashes with my pasteboard shortcut, right? I'm very used to it and I use it everywhere. I don't want my client script command shortcut to clash with that. So after the client script command has been created, I can edit the keyboard shortcut to suit my convenience, right? And one more thing to note is, if there's a system keyboard shortcut, preference will always be given to the system shortcut rather than the client script command shortcut. Okay, you'll have to keep that in mind as well. And keyboard shortcuts are disabled by default in an organization. So unless you have those turned on, you will not be able to set up your client script, the shortcuts. So let me go into accessibility, and under motor, under the keyboard shortcuts, you see it's turned off. So when it's off, these are all that you have. So once you turn them on, once I add my command, commands, my client script commands, there'll be a section that shows up here where I can edit my client script commands. I can modify them to suit my convenience. And obviously, when client script command is deleted, any user who has modified a keyboard shortcut, those will get removed from their user interface and their user experience as well. So let's get into the demo. So like I said, client script commands, they break the chain of client scripts, right? You're not tied down to a particular module or a layout or a field or a page or an event, right? You can trigger them anywhere you want. So that gives you a lot of freedom. For example, you might want to access a utility anywhere in CRM without having to be in a particular screen. So let me just show you. So let's say I have contacts. Let's say I'm working in a bank, right? And I don't want to go into a contact and have a field where I enter a particular, let's say, a particular loan amount, and then have to calculate the EMI, the tenure, and then have to get back to the customer, right? So I want that feature to be accessed anywhere. So suppose I'm on a call, I don't want to search for that particular user's record and go into it. And I could have a client script that gives me that data here while entering the data, but I want to access that in that interface anywhere, right? So I just go into my client scripts. So you'll see this here. Before we had only the modules there. So I already have an email calculator. I'm sorry, an EMI calculator configured. I'll just quickly show you the code. So this EMI calculator, it triggers a widget. I don't know why I can't zoom. Okay. So this EMI calculator, it triggers a widget. Anything that you can do in a client script, you'll be able to do using the same client scripts that are triggered using the commands, right? So I've already have a widget that I've integrated into CRM, and using the client side SDK that client script supports, I'm just using a pop-up and showing the EMI calculator. And if you're new to this interface and you want to see what these APIs are, you just click the information icon here, and you will have the Zoho development kit that gives you all the documentation necessary, right, for the client-side API, as well as the server-side API, where you'll be able to access the server-side data. You'll be able to understand all this just using the documentation. So I've just turned this on right now. Let me give this a quick refresh. And like I said, there are two ways in which client script commands can be triggered. One is the palette, and the other is the keyboard shortcuts. So the palette is here on the bottom of the screen, right? So if I, so the widget is something that I've already integrated, like I told you, and using the client script code that is triggered by the command, I'm just calling the widget using the pop-up, right? So if you notice, I'm not inside any module. I don't have to be inside any particular user's record or deal data to access this information. So I can just, if a user is on a call with me, I don't have to scramble around and find the record. I can just trigger this client script here using the command, and I have all the information necessary here. The code for this is linked in the document. So try it out when you find the time, right? So let's say I am in an order, right? Again, if I just go to the command palette, I can just pull up the calculator. It's that simple. And if you're new to these widgets, you just search widgets, and this is where you integrate a widget. And in the second session, I would have gone through how to add a widget in a lot more detail. So if you're new to widgets, go through that session and it'll make a lot more sense. So while I'm here, why don't I just create a shortcut for that as well? So let me go into my keyboard shortcuts. Right? So you see the commands now showing up. Since I'm an administrator, right now in my organization, any user who belongs to an administrator or a standard profile, they have access to managing a command, the commands here. So I just choose the command. Right now I have only one enabled. So I just choose the EMI calculator and I'll say EMI. I'll add a shortcut. Just remember that since this is running on the client side, you will have to do a refresh. And since it's being loaded onto your browser, based on your internet speed, the speed at which it loads is unfortunately dependent, right? So I'll just reload this again. So I'm going to type EMI. I'm not going to select anything here. I'm just going to type EMI and see that the EMI calculator comes up. So anybody else any other user who has a different shortcut, they can go ahead and edit this to suit their convenience, right? It's that simple. Okay, so that's how you can access a utility anywhere in Zoho CRM. So if you noticed, this widget that I showed, it didn't have to connect to the internet. It just did some basic math calculation that the widget did, and it showed it on the screen, right? So this is a basic utility that you can still access anywhere in CRM without being dependent or tied to a particular record or a module like a normal client script would be, right? So we'll go to the next one, context aware commands. So compared to the previous one was something that you could run anywhere, right? So this context aware command is something that will be aware of the context in which it is run, right? So of course, client-side commands can be run anywhere, but if you want a particular command to be run only in a particular place or to work only in a particular place, of course, you can just configure your command to work in that way. So I'll just go into my commands. This is another client script command that I've already configured. So creating an order. So if you, all I've done here is I'm making sure that the page on which this command is being triggered is in the contacts module. And I'm also making sure that I'm zooming in a little bit more and making sure that the name of the page is a detail page, right? I don't want this to be inside the list, just the contacts module where all the records are listed. I don't want that. So I'm making sure that it's inside the record detail page, right? And all I'm doing is let me show you the, so this is my CRM that I've set up. It's something very, very simple. So we have contacts, and each contact has orders that are linked to them, and each order has its own order status. Of course, when you look at this use case, the order status will be coming from an external service. But to keep things simple, I've just kept the order status here, so I'll be able to get the data from the next module, right? So what I want to do is, I want the client script to create an order when I'm inside this module, right? I don't want the order to be created when I'm here or when I'm in the home page. I want the client script command to be run only when I'm inside a contact, right? Of course, you could create a button here, but since we're talking about commands, I'll show how I've created this using a command. So I've already turned this on. Let me, so in the module, I've created another client script. So this command in the create order, I'm doing a navigate to the record create page, right? From the contact record, I want an order to be created. So I'm sending some information from here, there, right? This is a very simple use case, but since I'm sending information, I have to make sure that the orders module is capable of receiving that information, right? So that I'm doing through a command script, simple command script, where I'm just saying load order name. And here I'm just taking the navigation data that I'm passing from there, and I'm setting it into the name field, right? It's nothing too complicated. So I'll just reload this page. So now since I've turned on the client script command, I'm seeing this here. And you see the EMI shortcut has shown up for the EMI calculator. So I'm just going to say create order. And you see, I didn't have to pass any data. I didn't have to select any data. The client script command automatically took the data that I wanted to from the contacts module and brought me to the create order page with the data that I want passed. So obviously, this is a very simple use case, but the way you could implement is you might want a lot of data to be carried over from the contacts module to the orders module, right? From, for example, like the shipping address, the billing address, there might be a lot of information that you might want to carry over. So, and you may not want that process to be tied to a particular event, right? So after I finish entering all the information that I want to in the record, any user can just go say create order, and they can just have the client script command do the configured action for them. whenever they're ready for it to happen. So while I'm here, I'll also create a keyboard shortcut for it. So I just choose command. So the EMI calculator already has a shortcut created, so it's not listing here. So I just say CO and I'll add a shortcut. So technically, when I click CO, when I use the shortcut CO anywhere, when I use the CO anywhere, the client script is still being called, but I configure it to work only in the contacts module, only when it's within a particular record, right? So let's go to Rosie's order, Rosie's contact. So let's say you fill all the information that you want to be filled, that you want carried over to the orders module, and I'll just say CO, right? And the way I've configured is Rosie's name and Rosie's record ID get concatenated and passed over to the order name. So it's that simple. You're just limited by your imagination how you can harness the power of client script and client script commands. It's just so powerful. If you go through the documentation, you'll see so much that can be done. Client script commands is something that if you just take the time to figure things out, it's such a powerful feature that will really enhance the user experience and make things a lot easier for your users. So that's the context aware commands, right? Not necessarily running in all the environments within CRM. You can make it run and work in a particular place where it makes sense, right? Let's go to another one. Third-party integration. So again, we've already seen client scripts in the previous in part 2, how from client script you can call an API of Zoho of a different Zoho product. So within the Zoho ecosystem, you can call an API. Outside the Zoho ecosystem, directly from the client script, you'll be able to call an API using the client side APIs provided in the documentation. From the client script JavaScript code, you'll be able to call the deluge function, in which you might have a third party API integrated. So there are a lot of ways in which client script can trigger use an API, a third party API service. So obviously a client script command can do the same. So if I go into my settings, I'll show you something else I've configured. So again, this is very similar. So to make the user interface, I'm sorry. So I just turned this on. So this is a gold rate calculator, another widget that I've integrated. It calls a third-party API that fetches the live gold rates when the code is being run, right? So the third-party API is called inside the widget, and this the client script API calls the widget and triggers the third-party API. So it's the same as the EMI calculator. So like I said, the code is mentioned is linked to in the document. So feel free to try it out. So I'm using a pop-up. If you want to use a flyout, you can do that as well. So I've already enabled it. Just close this. I just refresh the page. So let's say I'm working in an online jewelry store. I have a customer. I don't want to go to a third party website and type the conversion rate for a gram of gold or a pound of gold or whatever. And I just want that to happen within the CRM wherever I am, without the extra steps that cause too much unnecessary hassle. So from the palette, I have the gold rate calculator since I've just enabled it. So I click that. The widget is right now configured to India, and it's giving the conversion of the gold into rupees. So right now the widget is built on has only these 4 different countries, and an API is being called in the background whenever this changes. So if you run it tomorrow, you'll probably find that the gold rate has changed, right? And obviously this can be triggered from anywhere. You don't have to be in a particular screen tied to a module or an event. Okay, I hope this works. Great. See? So of course, like any other client script, I can just create a keyboard shortcut for this as well. So I'll choose a command. I'll say grc. I'll add the shortcut. Let me just refresh the page. And if I say grc, type grc, the golded calculator comes up, right? So this is how you can merge a utility that runs anywhere along with a third-party integration, so you can get the best out of the client script command feature. Let's go to the last demo. Text-powered commands, right? So I want the command to work based on text. If you're using a client script, let's say I'm choosing this thing, right? So if client scripts are usually tied to an event, like when when a value is changed, or when the page is loaded, or when the page goes to be saved, right? So usually what happens is when you do an event, the text that you select gets unselected, right? So client script commands helps you out in that way. So let me show you what the use case that I thought of. So like I said, every contact has an order. Olivia has one. Rosie has one. And Charles has two. I guess he just has too much time on his hands. So Charles, these orders can be, obviously they go into the orders module. And like I said, you could integrate a third-party service that tracks that gets the current location of the status of the product delivery, right? Because your CRM is not going to do the delivery, right? You will have to use a third party service to get the data. So for the sake of convenience, I just have the statuses here, and from the orders module, I'll just be getting the statuses. So what I want to do is I don't want to call go to the third party API service and track the data. What I want to do is I just want to select the order name, and I want the status to be shown, right? So I'll just show you the command that I've created. So I have an order tracker here. I'll just enable this. So the ones that we saw so far were either widgets and using the navigation between two different modules, right? So here what I have is, it's very simple. Of course, when you integrate a third-party service for your delivery tracking, it becomes a little bit more complex. But I'm just getting the order statuses from my order statuses module and making sure the name matches, right? And then just showing an alert with the data that I get from the statuses module, right? So let me close this. Now since I've uh, enabled that, I'll go into my orders. So if you notice the code, it's not tied to any particular page or module like I had it for the previous the second one where the order is being created, right? So right now I just choose the order name, and okay, now when I select this, see, when I select a different button, this text gets unselected. So this is, I don't want this to happen. So I just go and create the keyboard shortcut that I want. If the command palette works for you, that's great. But if you're somebody like me who likes experimenting with different keyboard shortcuts and gets a kick out of it, you might like this more. So I'm just creating a shortcut for the order tracker. This saying OT. I'll refresh this. I'll refresh this as well. So let's see Rosie's, right? I've selected it and I'm just typing OT now. So, okay, so Rosie's order is delivered. So what this command has done is, let me just open the script in a different place. So this is a nice way, a very powerful way. Calling it nice is an understatement. So the order tracker. So all I'm doing here is using the client-side SDK API. I'm just using the selected value, right, from the client. I'm just getting the selected value and using it to do all the processing that I want to do. So this is how Rosie's is order is. That's her status. Okay, OT, right? Okay, 1 week to go. OT. Okay. Okay, so Olivia's is lost. That's too bad. Okay, so this can be run inside a thing as well, because like I said, the command is not linked to a place, right? So Olivia's order is lost, and you don't have to, use any third-party service. You don't have to, take the longer route to find longer route. You got it, to find the delivery status or the status of any, the response from any third-party API that you're integrating. So those are the demos that I have. So the client script has an API page. This is also linked in. This is the documentation, which is linked in the document. There are so many updates that are coming out right now. Subforms being edited is being released, and that's such a powerful feature that so many developers have had to create workarounds for, and now that's being supported by client script itself. So that's definitely something that you would want to take a look at if you missed the update to that, right? And Kaizen series, if you're not aware of it, Kaizen series is something focused on CRM. And within Kaizen series, it focuses on different sub CRM topics as well, or would you say CRM subtopics, right? So this is something again that you would definitely benefit from. Actually, a lot of the use cases I chose from these so that it'll be easier for you to get the code and integrate it the same way that I've integrated. So it'll be easier for you to get on board with the commands, right? So feel free to check that out as well. So a recap of today's session: we saw what client scripts are and how great they are, and how they are in some ways limited, and how commands breaks those limitations and gives you a little bit more control over your client scripts and your UI interface, and how you can use it for utilities throughout your CRM user interface without being tied down to a module or a layout or a record or an event. How you can use it in particular modules, with contextual awareness, for example, like the creating order from the contact. By passing data from the contact to an order, you can just pass data that is contextually relevant using a command without having to wait for a particular event, right? How you can use third-party integrations, and how using just selecting the text, you can trigger a client script, trigger a command, and use it to perform the necessary processing that you need to do.